Hello everyone, welcome back to the conservatory. So today I want to talk about diabetes. I want to talk about my diagnosis, I want to talk about my diabetes journey and the lifestyle changes that I've had to make along the way. You may also be wondering why I'm filming in black and white, because I want to. So diabetes. Now this isn't an advice video. This isn't. I'm not advising people to do anything that I've done along my diabetes journey, except my single piece of advice is to eat healthily, which is what got me into this mess in the first place. So I've been diabetic for 20 something years now. I was, at the time I was diagnosed, I was suffering from, I remember getting a gnat bite on my knee that got infected and it wouldn't clear up. It was just a bit of a mess. I needed antibiotics. I was drinking loads of sugary drinks. I was craving sugary drinks. Constantly thirsty. So there's kind of all these classic signs of diabetes that, well, I know they're classic signs now, but at the time I didn't have a clue they were classic signs. So I went to the doctors. I was prescribed some antibiotics to clear up the infection, and I didn't really think anything more of it. It wasn't until I was suffering from chest pains, now in my very late 20s, early 30s, suffering from chest pains was a concern. So I went back to the doctor, and whilst I was there, I told him all the symptoms of the chest pains. I told him everything about the how thirsty I was, how gnat bites and things like that on my legs wouldn't clear up, and there was other diabetic symptoms that I won't go into here, that I explained to him, and they tested my glucose levels then. And bear in mind that the range of glucose that you should aim for within your blood as a diabetic is, before you eat, between 4 and 7 is what I've been told. People might think differently or know differently or aim for different numbers. So you want to aim between 4 and 7 before you eat, and kind of nothing over 10 after you've eaten. And this is measured in mmol. No idea what that stands for. So when they measured my glucose via a finger prick, my number was 25. Now the doctor immediately called me an ambulance, and I distinctly remember the paramedic saying to me, "Are you diabetic?" And I was, "No, I'm not." Okay. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up in hospital. I was put on a drip, which at the time, from what I know now about diabetes, it must have been insulin within that drip to get my glucose levels down. So they managed to get my glucose levels down, and whilst I was in hospital, the doctor came around and said to me, with the levels of glucose that was in your blood, you technically should have been in a coma. So that was kind of a bit of a wake-up call to kind of start looking after myself, to start eating more healthily, cut out all the crisps, the biscuits, the chocolate, the sweets, everything that a diabetic shouldn't eat, I was eating. So I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. So not going into too much detail, the kind of type 2 that I had was that my body was producing a limited amount of insulin, but my blood cells weren't absorbing the insulin and making use of it. So they put me on a drug called metformin, many people would have heard of this, and that was the only drug that I was put on at the time. And I was sent away with a plan on how to exercise more, how to reduce my carbohydrate and sugar intake, and basically how to get my numbers down. I kept a diary of my numbers, and eventually I got to the stage where my finger prick test numbers were coming down to within range. I've never been one to go down as low as 4 mmol. However, my normal range at that point was between kind of 5 and 8 before I'd eaten. So this carried on for some time. There was a lot of adjustments to be made in terms of lifestyle, basically. So at the time I was in a rocky marriage. I was very unhappy. I was eating, I was comfort eating a lot, so it was a really difficult time to try and manage my diabetes. So like I said, this went on for a few years, and eventually sorry, Rocky's wants to come in. Come on, pups, come on in, good boy. So eventually I got it under control, got my blood glucose under control, everything was going okay, and then the longer it went on, the numbers started creeping up again. I was finding myself in that headspace where, oh, it's okay, my numbers are nice and low, I'll have a chocolate bar, it's fine. No, that doesn't work. You've got to completely, initially, you've got to completely cut out anything that's going to spike your blood sugars, anything that's going to make those blood sugars rise. You've got to cut that out and keep it under control. So no chocolate, no biscuits, no sweets, no. I found that mashed potato is the worst thing for me. So where I was kind of not keeping it under control very well, because I was like, okay, my bloods are low, I'll have a nice little biscuit, it's fine. As the years went by, the years went on, my body then stopped producing as much insulin. My insulin started to deplete, and my cells still weren't making use of the insulin that was producing. So the doctor then put me on another drug called, it was glipizide at the time, and it's now gliclazide. I think I've got that the right way around, because I've stopped taking that now, but I'll come on to that. So this particular drug was designed to hello. This particular drug was designed to force my pancreas to produce more insulin, which it did. And when I started on this drug, because my pancreas was producing more insulin, and I didn't understand, I knew I had to counteract that increase in insulin with more food, otherwise I'd have hypos. I didn't really understand how to do that. I didn't necessarily get the support that I needed to be able to do it. So I was having hypos. Now hypos, when your blood sugars, for me, is when my blood sugars go before 4, you'll start feeling dizzy, bit faint, you start feeling sweaty, you'll get confused, you can't really concentrate or function. And you've got to eat something sweet in that instance to get your blood sugar levels up and to get back into the range. So I was experiencing these hypos for the first time. Now, this wasn't a particularly nice experience, so again I had to go through that learning curve of understanding what affects what, because things had changed now. My body was all of a sudden producing a lot more insulin. So that was fine, that kind of plateaued out, I got used to that. I then went back to the mindset of, oh, my blood sugars are a little bit low. It's alright though, I can have a chocolate bar. It's fine, the blood sugar's low, it doesn't affect anything. Stupid mindset. It really was, and I'll get onto the reasons why in a second. So at this point, I avoided blood tests. I was having my eyes regularly checked, which they do. So you'll go to actually where I live, it's a little porta cabin that I go to, and they put these special drops in your eyes. It expands your iris pupil, makes your eyes bigger. So they can photograph the back of your eyes and they can see any, I think they call them microaneurysms within your eyes, which are basically where the blood vessels cross and they can expand and create all sorts of nasty stuff in your eyes. So I never had a problem with that. That was always okay, which I then took comfort in. Oh, must be, my diabetes must be under control because my eyes are all right. Anyway, so I became very blasé about my diabetes. I was basically ended up eating like I wasn't a diabetic. I didn't take it seriously. I was like, it's fine, I feel fine, I'm alright. But I was eating crisps, cakes, chocolate bars. I was eating, you know, if I had a roast dinner, I was eating 4 or 5 roast potatoes. I was having mashed potatoes. I was eating all the stuff that I shouldn't be eating. And it all came to a head one day when I went to the doctors for some reason, and I'm terrible with blood tests. I hate blood tests. He nailed me down for a blood test. And he was like, right, Neil, I'm going to stab you. I'm going to give you a blood test. All right, get on with it. So he done the blood test, and that was a Tuesday. I was driving home from somewhere on the Wednesday night, and it was about 9 o'clock at night, and my phone rang, and it was a doctor. And he's like, when you see that number come up on your phone, it says the doctor's calling you. I'm like, at 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, this isn't going to be good. So I answered the phone and he said to me, Neil, we've got a problem. Oh, my name's Neil, by the way. I realised in the last videos I haven't introduced me. My name's Neil. He says, Neil, we've got a problem. So I said, all right, doc, what's going on? And he said, your HbA1c is 129. I think it was at the time, 129. Now, is it HB? See, this is how bad I am. Is it the HbA1c or HB1ac? Anyway, the level of this particular blood test, I'm going to go with the HbA1c, was 129. Now, for a diabetic under, all right, Rocky. For a diabetic, he's throwing cushions on the floor. For a diabetic who's under control, he said that well, I know this, that your levels should be between around 48 or lower. And I was 129, and he said, what have you been doing about your diabetes? And I had to be honest, and I said, honestly, I've been terrible. Yes, I used to go out doing a lot of cycling, and I was doing a lot of exercise, but that wasn't enough to counteract the amount of rubbish that I was eating and throwing into my body. So, yeah, that was another eye-opener. It was like, Neil, you're back to square one. You are back to where you was when you was first diagnosed. How are you driving and how are you functioning? And I was like, he said, well, you need to get you in and check your ketones. Now, I don't know too much about ketones, so I'm not going to say too much about it here, but they're bad. If there's ketones, if you're producing ketones, that's bad news bears. So that happens when your bloods are really high, right? So I wasn't producing those, but he needed an action plan. So I was like, right. So I was maxed out. He maxed me out on metformin. I was on 4 metformin a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the night, and he maxed me out on what I could have for the glyphosate, which I can't remember what the dosage was now. Might have been 1 and 1. 1 in the morning, 1 at night, I can't remember now. So we did that. Again, he started bringing the levels down and down and down, and yet again, I still fell into that trap of, oh, my levels are down now, I've got it under control, we're all good. It's fine, I can eat what I want again. Gee. Looking back now, I'd probably just punch myself in the face, to be honest with you. Because now things progressed again. The levels went back up. I think the blood test I had a year or so, or a couple of years later, my levels were in the 90s. So nowhere near the 48. Not as bad as the 129 it was, but they were in the 90s. He said, Neil, this isn't working. We need to chat. So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, he's going to put me on insulin. Now, insulin is a totally different ball game to controlling your diet, exercising and taking pills. So I took pills, I did the exercise, I didn't control my diet. I did 2 out of 3 things. If I'd done 3 out of 3 things, I wouldn't be where I am today. So where I am today is that I currently inject insulin twice a day, and I take metformin along with 1,000 other drugs that a 50-year-old male takes. So when I went back and spoke to the doctor, he said, right, we need to do something. We're going to have to put you on insulin. There's no other option. And I said, do you know what, doc, I agree with you, because clearly I have a mindset or an attitude that I can't change this. So I hate needles. So I don't now, but at the time I hated needles. That's why I avoided blood tests as much as I could. So now he's put me on insulin, which is where I've been for the last 6 months. I take an insulin called Novamix 30. So for those of you that know about insulin, you've got 2 types of insulin. You've got basal and bolus. I'm going to put my neck on the line now and say that I believe basal is a slow release insulin, and I think bolus is a fast release insulin. I'm not too sure, because I take the mix, so I don't really think about that side of things. So the one that I take has got big Novamix, right? It's got it's a 70-30 split of one and the other. So I inject, what do I inject? 22 units of that in the morning, and I inject 24 units of that at night, and I do this before a meal. I have what they call a continuous glucose monitor stuck on my arm. That, for me, being a techie boy, I love it. I love the data. I'm data driven. Everything. I love data. I'm very data driven. So I love looking at the data. I can see my trends. I can see where my bloods are going, where they're not going. I can see when I'm going into a low. I can see when I'm going into a high. You have to understand how to read the data from a CGM, because a CGM reads the fluid that is under your skin and between your blood vessels. I can't remember what that let me know. I can't remember what it's called. Something fluid. It reads that, which is different to a finger prick test, which obviously is reads your blood. And it's about, for me, people say that they normally find it's about 15 minutes behind what a finger prick test is. So for me, it's about 25 minutes behind. So it's important to understand whether it's going up, whether it's going down, or whether it's just plateaued. So if I know the arrow's pointing down on my data, I know that eventually that's going to go down and down and down and then end up in a hypo. And that's when I'll need to eat something. So when I'm just going back a little bit to when I said that this is now a completely different kettle of fish, taking insulin, the things that I now have to consider and now have to think about is immense, to the point whereby I researched something a couple of days ago called diapression, and it was kind of, this is why I wanted to make this video. It's not, like I said, it's not an advice video. It's just purely for me to document where I started to where I am now and the struggles I had in between. So how has this affected me mentally? Yeah, it's a struggle. Every day is a struggle. You are constantly having to, when I wake up, the first thing I do is look at my phone. What are my blood sugar levels? Okay, 7 o'clock, go and inject. Okay, half hour later, need to eat. And then from that point onwards, I'm continually watching my bloods because I generally have lunch about 1 o'clock, but my bloods can plummet and crash by 12, and I'll need to eat. Other days they can not plummet and crash at all, and I'll need to have a really low carb lunch. So there's no rhyme or reason as to what can affect your blood glucose. I can have a bad night's sleep. It can be hot today, it can be cold today. There's all these different environmental factors that can affect your blood glucose. It's not just about what you eat. So there's all these things that I now need to consider and think about day in, day out, Where am I going to be that day? Okay, I'm in London today for work. All right, I need to take my kit with me. I need to make sure I have lunch here. Have I got a meeting? No. Right, I need to block out that time to make sure I'm not in a meeting. Is my blood's going to crash while I'm in a meeting? Is my blood's going to crash while I'm on the train? Where am I going to be when I need to inject? Where am I going to be when I need to eat? Having to continually think about all this stuff is pants. And I hate it. I hate the fact that I allowed myself to get here. I've got so much respect for all the type 1 diabetics out there that have lived with this for their entire lives, that go through this day in and day out. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It's awful. It's an awful disease. It's just a bloody awful thing to have to manage, and it's really, really difficult. And then when you put on top of that all the other life struggles that we all go through, we all suffer from, some days I could just sit and cry. It's really, really hard. And you know, Lisa, what she has to go through with me day in, day out, she's part of this as well. You know, we're a married couple. She's very much part of this. Oh, God, let's go and have something to eat. Let's go and have Chinese. What can I eat? It's just easier not to go. Which is the wrong attitude. I should go. Because, did you just hit the tripod? You did, didn't you? So, you know, everything in moderation. Have I learnt my lesson from when I was first diagnosed, going through the I'm alright, it's only diabetes, I can eat what I want? Have I learnt my lesson? Yeah, I've learnt it the hard way. Very much so, I've learnt it the hard way. I now suffer from achy legs, sore feet, my hips hurt, you know, and these are all ailments and signs of diabetes. Am I going to recover from this and live a long, maybe? No, well, I'm not going to recover. I've got it. I can't reverse it now. It's too late. I could have reversed it at the beginning if I'd have done the three things. If I'd have done the three things and eaten healthily, exercise, take all the pills. If I'd have done all those three things, I probably could have reversed it, but I didn't. I ignored it, buried my head in the sand. Well, there's a shock. So, if there's one piece of advice that I would give is, if you are diagnosed type 2 diabetes, do not ignore it. Make those changes. Do that exercise if you're able to. If you're not able to, then speak to your diabetic nurse and find out what exactly you can do to keep your blood sugars under control, because it is so bloody important. So important. And I'm looking at numbers every day. I'll look now. Where are we now? So, what time is it? It's 1:30. I ate at 1 o'clock, and before I ate, my bloods were on 4.2, so they were low for me. I was close to going into a hypo, and now they're at 6.9. You can see the spike. Can you see the spike? Is it focusing? No, I don't know. So, and when you look at this data and when you read these graphs, don't be afraid when you see spikes. Don't be afraid when you see the troughs. It's not going to be a flat line. A non-diabetic's blood will go up and down. Their blood sugars will go up and down. When they eat, their body naturally produces insulin. Your body absorbs the insulin and it brings it back down again. And then you normally stay around 5, I believe. So, listen to your doctor, listen to your diabetic nurse, and please, please, please look after yourselves, because if I go too mad, this video is going to go on for hours. How many shots do we have at this life that we're living? How many? Just one. Do not mess it up by being ignorant to your ailments and your diabetes. It's not easy. It's very, very hard. If you've had a rubbish day at work, you come home in a mood. You know, you've had a bad day at the office, the trains are delayed and up the spout. When you come home, all you want to do is just comfort eat. Can't do that anymore. When it happens to me, I come home and I'll grate a carrot and I'll dip it in a little bit of aioli. Whoop-de-doo. Carrots for snacks. But the irony is, I've now got used to it. I don't even fancy chocolate anymore. Can't look at chocolate. Someone puts a chocolate cake in front of me. No, thank you. Because for a long time now, I've not eaten that stuff, and I don't miss it. I don't fancy it. I don't even like it. What was it I ate the other day? I ate something the other day. It was a Rocky chocolate bar, and it was horrible. It was so sweet. It was horrible. If I want something a little bit naughty, then I will have a 90% dark chocolate bar from, shameless plug, Hotel Chocolat. That's what I'll have, because they're the only company who produces 90% chocolate that isn't bitter. You know, it doesn't make you sit there and go. It's actually really quite nice and smooth. So I'm still working through the whole getting used to being on insulin. I've been on 2 holidays since I've been on insulin. I'm fortunate enough to be on, go on 2 holidays whilst I've been on insulin. Again, the amount of planning that has to go into that. Am I going to be on an aeroplane when my bloods crash? When have I got to inject? Am I going to be able to inject? Now, so the best thing I did, I was always worried about injecting in public. You know, oh, what if I'm somewhere where I've got to... I went to see the Foo Fighters at the London Stadium in June. Yeah, I want to say June. And it was an evening show. I went straight from work and I had to inject somewhere. There's nowhere. I'm never going to go into a public toilet and inject. I'm never going to go into my own toilet and inject. It's just not nice. So I stood in the concourse of London Stadium, got my kit out, got my needles out and injected there and then. And do you know what? I understand that there may be people around that. I was discreet. I didn't like go, hey, here's my stomach. Bosh. No, I didn't do that. No one wants to see that. So I understand there's people out there with needle phobias, and I understand there's people that don't want to see somebody else injecting something. And yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll get some funny looks and it'll be, what's he injecting over there? Well, actually, it's a life-saving drug that I'm injecting. If anyone says anything, that's exactly what I'll say to them. I say, look, I'm really sorry you saw that, but it's something that I have to do. It's a life-saving drug that I have to now inject. It's a life-saving drug that I'm now on because I didn't look after myself. So, anyway, look, I've rambled on for long enough. This is it's not a random rambling. It's a premeditated rambling, and it's something that I needed to just get off my chest and talk about, because mental health is very important, and gentlemen and ladies, don't be afraid to talk about your mental health. Explore it, deal with it, and don't be afraid to talk about any ailments, and make sure you get the right help, and make sure you follow that help and do everything you're asked to do, otherwise it won't get any better. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to leave you all to it. Enjoy your morning, evening, afternoon. It's afternoon here, so I'm going to enjoy my afternoon. Yeah, bye.